As an author, I always like to start with a story, but this is a true story. Unlike my books, it's a true story about something that happened to me. So, I used to work for a large organization that had a big commitment to ethnic relationships, healing, ethnic identity formation, racial reconciliation. They still have a big commitment. I just don't work with them anymore. But they had these fantastic trainings where they would bring in speakers. Hi, welcome. Hey, Tracy. Hello. Come on in. This is the other author I was mentioning, Tracy Clark. She's here. She's awesome. Invite her over. So, last time I went to one of these trainings, the speaker was Soong Chan Ra, and he writes a lot of intense books about racial reconciliation. And he had us do a fishbowl exercise. Has anybody ever done a fishbowl? Sometimes, yeah. So the point of a fishbowl is the people in the middle get to speak, and the people on the outside are just observing. And in this particular fishbowl, people from subdominant culture were in the middle, and those of us from majority culture were on the outside. And we just got to listen to their stories. And let me tell you, the stories were intense. They were talking about what it's like every day to face microaggressions just because of their culture or the way they looked. They talked about, there's one woman who's short in stature and rather square because she resembles the indigenous people of her country. She has very dark skin. And when people see her, they assume she doesn't speak English. So they talk really loudly and slowly. And she has a master's degree and is completely bilingual in both languages. So it's just completely, offensive to her. But what even made it sadder to me was she said, people often push her out of line in Starbucks. Like, this happens to her a lot. People will just cut in front of her. And this is in Reno, Nevada. So we think it's not happening? It's happening. So these are the kind of stories that they told about how they were afraid for their children at school, how the kids got bullied, how they came to America and wanted to change their name to something that sounded more Anglo, and yet they felt really conflicted because that was dishonoring their parents, but they changed their name as soon as they could because no one could pronounce their name. So just that conflict of the cultures. There were tears on the inside of that circle, and there were tears on the outside of that circle. It was intense. Well, the problem happened after the circle. We broke up into these little groups to sort of debrief. And my group was a bunch of white people, and my boss, Pauline, who's her family immigrated from China, so she's a Chinese immigrant. And then my friend Yu Shen, who's immigrated from Taiwan. So both of them came as young children, but they had the immigrant experience. So they said to us, what did you think of the fishbowl? It got very quiet in the room, very quiet. And my experience was, anything I say right now could be wrong. I could be stepping on a landmine. I could hurt somebody's feelings. I don't know what to say. And so I said, nothing, which was pretty much what was happening in the group. And then someone had a brainstorm and they said, thank you for sharing your story with us. That was just so impactful. I really felt privileged that you shared your story. And we're all like, hey, that sounded safe. And we jumped on that bandwagon. We're like, yes, thank you for sharing your story. That was great. Oh, thank you. And they looked a little bit disappointed, this darkness kind of came over the face. And so they kind of sent us back to our rooms to sleep because it was night. And they're like, we just need to stop. We knew we didn't give the right answer, but we didn't know what the right answer was. Nobody really slept well that night. And the next day, we had a bigger debrief with our big regional team. And Pauline, who I said was Asian, and if you know anything about that culture, it's very hard to be direct, and it's very hard to be confrontational. But she loved us enough to do both. And she said to us, last night was really hard for us. We poured out our hearts in this fishbowl, and all we heard back was, thank you for sharing your story. It was a privilege to hear your story. She said, that doesn't help. What we need to hear was, wow, that sucks. That hurts. I hurt with you about that. How can I help? Is there anything I can do? Can we figure out a way to talk about this more? Can you tell me more of your story? Can we do this together somehow? She said, that's what we needed to hear. And you say you want to be in this with me, but let me tell you how it feels. She said, it's like being inside of a boxing ring. She's inside every day fighting against racial prejudice because she has no choice but to be inside the ring. She said, you say you want to help me and you jump into the ring, but when it gets uncomfortable, you jump out of that ring really fast. She said, I need you to stay in the ring with me. And I was like, oh wow, that's intense. So I raised my hand and I knew that silence wasn't the right thing. We're all getting quiet again. So I said, Holly, I wanted to say something last night, but I felt like I would be stepping on landmines, like I would be hurting somebody no matter what I said. It felt like walking on eggshells. And she said, Jackie, I need you to be willing to walk on eggshells for me, to blow up a landmine for me in this conversation, because we are going to hurt each other. And it is going to be hard. But this is how we figure it out together. Are you willing to get in the ring with me and stay? And I was like, okay, I made my commitment that day. No matter what, I'm going to try to stay in that ring, to have difficult conversations about race, about sexuality, about all the things that are hard to talk about in our culture. And ever since then, I've tried to do that through my talks, through my books, through my blogs. And that's why I wanted to talk about how to do that with books. Because does this feel like a landmine conversation sometimes? And yeah, in your classroom, I see the nods. It's hard to know how to talk about it. So I'm telling you 3 easy ways. It's not so hard. 3 easy ways we're going to do this conversation. Discussion, displacement, and developing friendships. And I cheated on the last D.